Hi, Mark. I'm seeing people are beginning to stream in. Maybe we'll give them some 5 or so minutes.
Okay.
All right. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. This is George Masila, tuned in from Nairobi, Kenya. we had said that we give everyone around 5 or so minutes. So in the next 1 minute, we get started. Our guest is already here, and I bet most of the people are also about to dial. So in the next 1 more minute, we start. Seeing Dr. Tony, the CEO of Kenya National Innovation Agency, is also here. So in the next 1 minute, we get started. Thank you. All right, our 1 minute is up. So good afternoon from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is George Masila, the communications lead at the Kenya National Innovation Agency. Pleased to welcome you to this June edition of the Kenya webinar series, where we'll be looking at how we can tap and optimize artificial intelligence and create value out of it for our respective organizations. Now, Mark, you might have seen on the internet that today it happened to be an abrupt holiday for most Kenyans, especially because there were some peaceful demonstrations around a memorial demo. And probably the turnout could be low, but we are sure to record this and ensure that we share with all those who had pre-registered. We have around 127 pre-registrations, people from different organizations, but looks like most of them have probably decided to take the holiday too much seriously. So we will be getting started either way. We have to proceed because we scheduled this and it has to go on. But I'm sure most of them will be tapping into the recording that we'll be sharing on email and also on our socials together with our YouTube channel. So now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of our webinar series. Today we are hosting Mark Fagan. We know him as a lecturer in public policy at Harvard Kennedy School, but he will do more justice to himself by introducing himself in the best way possible. But before we just do that, I will invite the CEO of the Kenya National Innovation Agency to give us some welcoming remarks before we get started with the main session for the day. Over to you, Dr. Tony.
Thanks very much, George. Really great to be here. I know it's a break for a number of Kenyans now that they gladly took it when they saw that it is possible, that it can be a break. But definitely from the Innovation Agency, our mandate is in developing and managing the national system of innovation for Kenya. We do have a range of programs. We spend a lot of time with academic institutions. We have work with private sector and government. We do a lot of work with startups. And also regionally, we have some level of influence. We run the Pan-African Network of Innovation Agency, and then some of the work we do, we cascade it to the region. We do have a very intentional mandate of demystifying and explaining and articulating matters of innovation in multiple forms as it comes. So many a times we also look for experts that we can engage, who can share their perspectives, their depth of experience and knowledge. And this is how we are hosting Mark today. We've been doing a series of these webinars over the last several months, and as we progress to the rest of the year and into the next calendar year, we will have a wide series of webinars, and we will be building this content and availing it to ecosystem players. So thanks very much, Mark, for accepting to co-create this. But at the same time, for the benefit of the audience, the webinar is not the end of a potential engagement. And I think we can discuss that a little bit also towards the end of the webinar, that we are laying a foundation for potential longer term collaboration. And we hope it plays out well for the benefit of the ecosystem. And with those few or many remarks, thanks very much and welcome, and over to you, George.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Tony, for that welcome remark. So I'll request Mark to go on. You will introduce yourself in the best way possible, and then you'll just get started with your presentation. Now, to our lovely audience, we'll have some opportunity to interact with Mark. We'll have some questions at the end of the presentation. So please stay tuned and follow through. We will be taking note of whatever comments come through in the chat section, but also you will have an opportunity to go on camera at the end. Over to you, Mark.
Well, thank you so much, George, and Dr. Tony as well. It's a delight and a privilege to have the opportunity to share some thoughts with you, and I'm excited to do so. By way of quick background, I am not an academic by training. I'm a practitioner, but I've been teaching here at the Kennedy School for almost 20 years. With regard to artificial intelligence, my interest is how do organizations bring AI into their organization successfully to create value and minimize risk. So that's what I'm all about. Well, let me get started on this journey of providing some perspective on AI. I'm going to share my screen and walk you through some materials. And as George mentioned, at the end, we'll have some time to do some Q&A as well. So let me get us started, and I'm going to do it with this. So in terms of background, let me add one more thing. One of the courses that I teach is operations management. It's how do you bring quality public services to your constituents efficiently and with equity. So that's the mindset I have about things. So it's not terribly surprising that 3 months ago, when I needed to get my pacemaker for my heart replaced, I thought about it as a great opportunity for a case study for my course. So what I did is I built a swim lane diagram. It's a process map. The swim lanes are the rows of this. And I thought about all the different players. Well, there's me, there's the scheduling of it, there's the surgery team, there's inventory, having the pacemaker, having the sutures, etc. And of course, there's a financial end at the back. So I did this, and it was kind of fun just for me to get a sense of how this process will work. But then there's a second course I teach here at the school, and that's about artificial intelligence. And so I got to thinking about where could or already does AI play in this journey. And when I actually mapped it out, I was stunned, surprised by the number of places where AI has a role. From the perspective of a patient, AI can help with scheduling. It certainly can help with the follow-up. In terms of the hospital itself, scheduling. For the surgery team, pre-op preparation, the actual day of surgery. You can go down the list. AI is got the potential to add value everywhere. Now, let me zoom out from me as an individual and start to think about AI for you and AI more broadly. Every innovation, no matter what it is, follows the S-shaped adoption curve. You start out with innovators and early adopters, you get the early majority, the late majority, and then eventually the laggards come along. This is a fun example of this from the US spread of technology over the past 100 years. And what you observe is over time, if we move more towards the right-hand side of the slide, closer to today, you're seeing a lot of these curves get shorter and shorter. Nothing has accelerated like AI. I mean, it's gone from no one talking about it to everyone talking about it, very few people using it to lots of people using it, literally in a couple of years. Now, that's a little unfair because artificial intelligence has been around for 50 plus years, and many of us, me included, have been working with it on things like robotics and the like for a long time. But for the general population, this has become an absolutely explosive innovation opportunity. Now, when you think about opportunity, you start to think about the art of the possible. How can AI actually be used? Where can you find an opportunity for it? And when I think about it, there's a couple of different perspectives you can take. So one way of thinking about artificial intelligence is the spectrum of sophistication of the AI itself. So you can go at one end of the spectrum from very simple rules-based approaches to the other end of the spectrum, which is very complex and highly adaptive. So let me give you some examples, and this will help for those of you who are less familiar with AI, have a way to think about it. So at the very kind of basic level, there's rules-based automation. This is predefined logic. It's automating routine processes. So one of the processes that is always a challenge here in the United States is the registry of motor vehicles, where you go to register your car. And there's a series of requirements you have to have in terms of the title, in terms of the vehicle identification number and the like. This is something that you can have automated with AI, and there's no risk. The rules are well established, the forms and documents are well established, and you're simply trading out a human doing it with a computer doing it. Moving from that very simple rule-based approach, you can use predictive analytics. An area that I'm interested in are railroads. I know that's not everyone's interest area, but I'm particularly interested in them, be they passenger or freight. One of the challenges for railroads is how do you determine when you need to repair either a car or locomotive or the rail? You can use predictive analytics, which is using historic data to forecast future needs very effectively. Then you can migrate to natural language or vision AI, using kind of pictures to identify issues. Sticking with my railroad example, I've used images generated from drones to look at freight yards to make sure that people are working properly. They have the right protective equipment on. They're following the right safety rules. Now, I could have someone looking constantly at video stream of that, but it'd be very expensive, time consuming, and tiring. I can have an AI algorithm do that for me just like that. Then we get to the more exciting stuff, generative AI. That's using things like ChatGPT or Claude. And here you're trying to generate new information. Now, many of us have used it to write a poem for our loved one when we forgot to buy a card. But it's got much more power to it in terms of helping us write memos, analyze information, and the like. And then you can move all the way to the other end of the spectrum where you've got autonomous or adaptive systems where you're using, for example, drones to inspect a bridge. And it's doing it automatically. It's knowing where to go and what kind of information to provide. So this is one way of looking at AI. A second way of looking at it across a spectrum is the amount of risk you take and how much oversight you need from the low end to the high end. Because AI has great power, but it also brings risk. And for those of us in the public sector in particular, we've got to be very mindful of risk. We have an obligation to our constituents to only use technology that is generating a risk-adjusted, strong return on investment. So some areas have very low risk with minimum insight required. If you have a chatbot that's responding to a well-established set of frequently asked questions, you don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about that. On the other hand, if you're using autonomous vehicles, you want a lot of insight because they've got a lot more risk. So you've got a spectrum to think about, from low risk and minimal oversight to higher risk to significant risk. And your job, and we can help you with this, is to figure out how do you make that balance work effectively. Now, I have used the term artificial intelligence, AI, many times, and one should always create a definition so that we have a common understanding of what we're looking at. So let me start with a definition. There are lots of them, but I think this captures the essence for us as practitioners. AI helps systems perceive, understand, decide, and communicates in ways that augment what you and I do. So the perception is being able to see, whether that's a forecast or looking at a visual image, to understand, okay, this is what the data says, to make a decision. Yes, we're going to replace the rail. No, we're not going to replace the rail. And communicate, actually being able to say, hey, this is information. So here is very simple definition, but this is what we're doing. We're basically augmenting what you and I do. Now, when you think about artificial intelligence, there are three key ingredients or requirements for an AI algorithm or system. The first is intentionality. The computer makes decisions in the way that we would as a human. Now that's challenging because you and I have accumulated years of experience and insight, and we're asking a computer to do the same thing. So that's number one. Number two is intelligence, that we're using machine learning and data to make intelligent decisions. And three, and perhaps the most interesting and challenging, is adaptability, learning to adjust to new and ever-changing conditions. Now you'll see on the right-hand side of the page an autonomous vehicle. This is Waymo, which is owned by Google and Alphabet. And for the past 15, almost 20 years now, they have been refining the technology to have a driverless car. And they've actually gotten there. So today, if you happen to be in San Francisco or in Singapore, in a number of cities in China, you can ride in a driverless car. I've been in this space now for more than a decade, and I am amazed at the ability to take the decades of experience I have driving and turn it into literally zeros and ones computer code. Now, when you look at this, you could say, what's the purpose? And certainly it has the potential to be a lower cost form of transportation, but that's not the real value. The real value is trying to save lives. In the US, 40,000 people die every year in car crashes. They may be pedestrians, they may be cyclists, they may be occupants of the vehicles. 40,000 people. And of those 40,000 people, 90% of those crashes were human-caused factors. Distracted, texting on phones, alcohol, all there. If autonomous vehicles, which don't suffer from those same things, can take that number from 40,000 to 35 or 30 or 25 or 20, that is huge value that AI can create. Now, this is obviously one example. There are many examples, and they're not all as dramatic as this, but it does illustrate for you that if we invest the time and energy to learn how to do AI effectively, there is real value to create. So if this is the goal, well, how do we think about AI? Because AI has multiple different layers. So this image is how I think about artificial intelligence. Think of it as an onion. So the whole is artificial intelligence. The first layer of the onion is machine learning. It is essentially using data to make decisions. So the example I gave where we use historic data to predict when rail will fail or a freight car wheel will fail is helpful there. Another great example of machine learning is forecasting, simply forecasting demand. I'll give you a quick side note. Here in Boston, we are hosting 7 of the World Cup football matches. And the first 2 involved Scotland. So a group of something in the order of 20,000 people from Scotland came to Boston to enjoy being here, but mostly to enjoy the football game. And something happened that has never happened in Boston before. They literally ran out of beer. Apparently the Scots are big beer drinkers, and we didn't forecast well enough what the demand would be. Machine learning avoids those problems. Obviously, that's a trivial example, and the issues you deal with are often dealing with people's lives. So it's much more important, but that's the idea behind machine learning. Deep learning is using multiple different types of AI and putting them together. It's trying to create a replication of how your brain works. Your eyes, your mouth, your ears are all happening and working simultaneously to listen to me, to hear what I'm saying, to think about whether you agree with it, you disagree with it, you got a question you want to ask, all at one time. That's deep learning, and AI can do that. The most sophisticated level of AI is generative AI, and that's what ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity are all about. And it is trying to take information and create from that brand new information. So that's where it can create a memo for you, talking to your constituents about upcoming events, things of that nature. So those are the different approaches we have. Now, I think it's particularly important to understand how AI thinks, because it doesn't think. It doesn't think in the way that you and I do. It calculates. So let's use ChatGPT as the example to understand this. So let me explain what the G is. The G in ChatGPT is it's generative. It is literally trying to create something new from past information. The second is it is pre-trained. In this case, the company that sells it has already pre-trained the model. So OpenAI has done their work, and they've trained the model on how to take massive amounts of information, literally everything on the internet, and distill it down to give you the information that you've requested. T is for transformer. It's a way in which it can look at a lot of information at one period of time. The reason these are important is the following. If I ask you very quickly to think about the answer to this question, I want to buy milk, so I'm going to the blank. If we had everyone fill in the chat, or to speak it, I would get a lot of answers, but there'd be a central tendency. I've done this a number of times in the US, and I get store. I've done it in Europe, and I get the grocery market. I've done it in Latin America, and I get the bodega. What AI is doing is simply looking at, based on the context of the question, I want to buy milk, so I'm going to the, it looks at the highest probability for what the next word is, and that's what it puts in place. That is all it's doing. It is a calculator. Now, the calculations tend to be really good most of the time, and that's why if you actually put this into an LLM, a large language model, you will get the right answer. But from an intellectual perspective, I want you to understand, it isn't thinking like you and I do. It simply calculates. Now, most of the time it gets it right, but there is a concept called hallucination. It's a very elegant term for it messed up. It didn't give you the right information. There are a number of different ways that it can hallucinate. For you, that's at this stage not that important. But what is important is to understand there will be times that it will be wrong, that the calculation will not be what you want. And so you can't just trust AI. You need to verify, to build trust, to become more confident. And you always need to recognize it's nothing but a calculator. Now, having said that, there are a lot of comparative advantages that AI has. AI is really good at searching, finding, reading, and summarizing. I have a paper right here that I need to summarize. It's complex, it's technical, and I've read it once myself. I started with myself, but I'd like to see a summary and compare my takeaways from its takeaways, and it will, in my case, be ChatGPT 5. It's great at doing that, and I suspect many of you have already used it in that way. It's very good at writing prose, at speaking. Increasingly, you're having interactions with AI agents or bots. It's good at answering questions, be they audio or text. They're becoming better at translation, certainly not perfect, and they do miss nuance in language. But if you're doing kind of standard information, I do work in one of the judicial systems, and one of the challenges they face is that hearings in the courts often have multiple languages. And so for the court transcriber to be able to readily translate from Spanish or Croatian, from Creole, German, whatever the language is, to English, boom, AI is very good at that. It's great at seeing very detailed level information. Things that you and I may not see in an image, it's really good at. Pattern recognition, excellent. Finding anomalies. There's a fellow who's got a startup up the road who has videos where they look at manufacturing operations and they can see and identify where there's unsafe acts taking place or where there's opportunities for efficiency. That's looking for anomalies. Does a good job of forecasting, and it's really good at taking lots of different information and creating a composite image. If you put these in the context of your public sector work, Whether you're in healthcare, public safety, education, roads, transportation, I hope you can see, there's a lot of opportunity here. Now, having said there's opportunity, I also need to make sure you know there are risks. And the risks kind of fall into two categories. On the left-hand side are application level risks. So you put an AI algorithm in to support parents making decisions about school enrollment. You got to worry about the performance risk. Are there errors? Is there bias? Is there transparency? Making sure data is secured, making sure that there's control of the risk. That's on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side are more business level or system level concerns about ethics. Are we treating people fairly? Economic risk. Is AI displacing our workers, and how are we going to deal with that? And societal risks with misinformation. In the political environment, I can speak to here in the US, AI is being used very much as a kind of a political weapon where you're using both social media and AI modifications of real information to create concern about a particular politician. So this is the kind of risk profile we want to be thoughtful of. When you're diving in to thinking about, okay, I'm going to either bring AI in or I'm going to expand its use, I want you to have this kind of an image in your mind and use it as a checklist to say, have I dealt with performance risk? Have I dealt with security risk? Am I thoughtful about economic risks? It's just a checklist, but it's one you should use. Now, there is one other element that's particularly important when we think about using AI, and it's learning from a guy named Wald. This is a picture of an RAF plane that was used in World War II by the British. And the challenge was, for Wald, where should they reinforce the plane? So what they did was they looked at all the planes that came back from bombing missions over Europe and looked at where the planes had been hit with bullets. And they put red dots there. And they sent it off to Wald and said, we're thinking about reinforcing the wings and the tail because this is where all the bullets come. And Wald instantly knew that was a terrible decision. It was a terrible decision because they're looking at the wrong data. What they really need to know is, for the planes that did not return back, where did they get hit? And the answer was the engines and the cockpit. What you really need to focus on is, in this case, the missing data. One of the challenges of AI is the missing data. Here in the US, we've had a lot of use of AI to support hiring. You get 1,000 resumes for someone who's applying to be an engineer for your transportation department, and you want an efficient way of sorting through and deciding who would be the best candidate. Well, if you're training the AI model exclusively on the people you've already had, you're missing the data. You're missing the planes that didn't come back. So when you're thinking about AI and building something, I need you to always be thoughtful about what data do you have, and just like Wald, what data are missing. In thinking about AI, it is very powerful and can do a lot and create a lot of value. But at the end of the day, humans are also still really important. So this is an autonomous vehicle in San Francisco. It was operated by a company called Cruise, which is General Motors' autonomous vehicle. And there was a group of people who really did not like the idea of driverless cars. And the driverless car industry spent a lot, and I mean a lot of money and time, thinking about providing cybersecurity so no one could hack it. This group of people were humans, and they realized all they had to do was put an orange traffic cone on the hood of the car, and the car did not know what to do. It confused the AI so much that it just stopped. So humans plus AI, that's the solution. And so whenever someone says to me, what's the right use of AI? It's you.
So good people, I'm just checking that we might have lost Mark. So we'll try reach out to him and see if he can come back. So Mark, in case you can hear us, just note that we can't hear you from this side. I think your microphone is coming back. Just let us know once. Hello, Mark.
I'm reaching out to him offline, so we should possibly be able to reconnect in a little while.
Right, that's very good. In the meantime, to the rest of us who are in the room, you can drop a chat. You can drop a message or a question that you might want to ask at some point in the chat box as we try to bring Mark back.
One of the opportunities I am pursuing, and maybe now I can use this chance to speak a little bit about it, is growing a national system of innovation does require leveraging stakeholders and capabilities from ecosystems that have succeeded with innovation. And in this case, it's not about just innovation. We don't look at it as having some nice ideas and some simple ideas. No, it's really about a strong system that is able to identify, nurture, support innovative solutions for greater good. Now, we are in discussion to attract some external experts to provide capacity strengthening, institutional strengthening, knowledge exchange, insights, including supporting specific institutions that we are agreeing upon in improving their local entrepreneur and the innovation ecosystems. One of those discussions we have right now is with the World Intellectual Property Organization, who are actually a UN institution that has a wide pool of resources around intellectual property, you know, mention it, copyright, patents, and so on and so forth. And they've got a very, very, very strong system of nurturing not just the protection of intellectual property, but also the commercialization of the same intellectual property. That's one. The second is we are having deep conversations with Harvard around depth of knowledge of growing a national system of innovation, looking at different segments of our society. In this case, our discussion with Mark revolves around public sector. And he is very strong. He is a practitioner, not just academic. I mean, he teaches, but he teaches as a practitioner. He's very experienced on how to leverage AI for enhancing public services and public good. And most of us have some role in the public sector. So we do have opportunities to leverage AI. But the question is, how do we do this most effectively? And so this is why we invited Mark. And one of the discussions now we're having is how to translate this into practical terms within the country. And we started off, let's introduce you into the ecosystem through a webinar and have some conversations online. And then we will be getting into some kind of collaboration framework for him to become a greater resource to us, including his networks. And we'll be very happy to take ideas from those of us who are on the call, and anyone who has ideas of how we could leverage such a relationship, among others that we are constructing. The other bullet that I thought about, the Innovation Agency has what we call a maturity framework. So I'll put my screen up. We've got a maturity framework around enhancing your innovation capabilities. And here we look at elements like leadership, policies, financing, markets, culture. In case of institutions like universities, we look at the teaching and learning and the entrepreneur teaching and learning, and we've seen many realities or challenges that institutions face. We've also customized this maturity framework to public institutions. If you want to be more entrepreneur in the way we approach and innovative in the way we approach our services that we offer to the ecosystem, be it leveraging technology, enhancing the culture within the institution, creating systems that somehow can exploit innovative opportunities as they emerge. We've got a framework. We've piloted it with about 25 universities. We've also moved to public sector. We worked with a number of public institutions. We are also introducing it to the TVETs, and so on and so forth. And if you do have an interest in how to strengthen innovation in your institution, please reach out to the Innovation Agency. We've got besides the framework, we've got a range of interventions that we can work together on this. Now I see Mark is back. We got an opportunity to take a break and talk about a few other things. Please, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm sure AI has an answer for what happened. I saw what time I dropped off, so let me come back to this and share my screen one more time and zip along here to make sure we have time to cover this. Just confirming, can you see my slide?
We can only see the view of who is in the meeting, so maybe it's the wrong tab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, hang on one second. Let me try one more time. Okay, I think we've got it now. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay,
yeah, good.
All right. So I'll just quickly go back to mention, you got to have governance. you need a set of rules for people to know this is what you can and can't do. In that, the most important element are the guiding principles. And in our world, which is a public sector world, you got to make sure there's public benefit. It's creating value for the public. You need accountability, transparency, fairness. You got to make sure there's privacy, reliability, and that we're going to continually monitor. This is an area for a separate session, but it's really important. I think one of the most exciting aspects of AI is how do you decide which use cases to bring in? As Tony, I just heard, was saying, there's lots and lots of potential. How do you decide? What I've observed about a lot of people is they are chasing a shiny object. They hear from someone, oh, we've got this, we put in this great new AI project to handle scheduling of hospitals, and then you hear about it and say, oh, I should go do that. That is not the right way to think about it. Be more structured. Think about the core processes you do in every one of your ministries. Where are the pain points? What you want to know is, how can I solve the pain and use AI for the pain? The framework for doing that is you start in step one, you identify your core functions. Number two, you identify where the pain is. Number three, you assess, is AI a solution to the pain? That's not enough. AI has to be the best solution. If it is, then you do some prioritization, you think about risk, and you propose a pilot and go work it. This is, to me, essential. It's the most efficient, effective way of bringing AI in. Now, I started earlier and mentioned about risk. You need to have a structured way of thinking about risk as well. So I think about it in three buckets. There's a quality bucket, an effectiveness bucket, and a fairness bucket. On the quality side, it's all about accuracy of the information. But there may be some legal risk, there may be political risks. Effectiveness, operational. What about the workforce? How are you impacting them? Can you do it for the budget you think you're going to do it for? And then in terms of fairness, with my autonomous vehicles, health and safety of people, paramount. How fair is it from an accessibility and a risk and an expertise perspective? So this is kind of the key. You got three core ingredients to think about. You got to have the governance model, you got to pick the right projects, and you got to make sure you're thinking about risk. So for your AI journey, what's the roadmap? You need to know AI is here, it's disruptive, but it will only increase. And so think about how you can create value from it. Putting AI in the loop, but AI is a tool. You are the human, you are the driver. Good governance and risk management, critical. Focus on pain points, and you can be the change agent. Even if you're not the expert, we can get you smart enough for you to be able to find the experts to make this a reality. And my final thing is, if you want to learn more about how I look at this, I've got a book out there called Governing with AI. You're more than welcome to go take a look at that. All right, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back to this, and I'll stop sharing, and we'll all be back together, and we can open it up to comments from Dr. Tony, or questions that you may have.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark, for that comprehensive discussion on AI. I think even for the newbies, there is a lot of knowledge to pick up from your presentation. So now, good people, I will open it up for Q&A. You can raise your hand, and then you will proceed with your question or your comment. So I'll also try check if we have anything from the comment section. But feel free to open your mic and camera if possible, and then you can go ahead with your question.
Getting the first question is always difficult. So let me ask the first question. For one of you in the group, share with us where you are in your AI journey. Is this something you're just starting to think about? Is this something you've got some pilots on? Or is this something where you're already moving along and creating value and you can share with us how we can learn from you?
Right. So we'll be picking responses to that. But probably one of the key things that you might want to help us understand, especially given that I've seen some people in the room who are affiliated with institutions of higher learning, innovators mainly, and of course, top leaders in the higher education institutions around here. And people are wondering, probably from your experience, what are some of the use cases, especially when it comes to the top leadership? What are the use cases of AI? I know you've talked about using machine learning to forecast, but ideally, what are the best practices and what are the use cases for AI for corporate leadership in these institutions of higher learning?
Well, oh, I see. Well, I'll respond to that, and then I saw we have something else that Tony wants to share. AI is a huge disruptor for higher education, and everyone, whether you're in higher, at the university level or at the secondary level, AI is fundamentally changing what we need to teach people and how we need to teach it. So I think the number one thing I think about is, what is your objective, your learning set of objectives for your students? Our goal is, I can speak for myself, I got to make sure my students, when they come out and graduate, get jobs. And so I'm really thinking about AI, and I want them to be AI enabled. I want my students to be knowledgeable enough about AI so that they will know, if they go off to be the head of the Department of Transportation or a school board, how AI can bring that into their organization. I realize I'm in some ways disappointing you, George, because I'm not giving you, here are the three things. And that's because I really do believe in this idea of, where is your organization having pain? Because every organization is different. I'll give you a couple of quick examples and then we'll move along. But I was doing some work with an organization that is responsible for healthcare. And their big issue is scheduling operating rooms, because they typically schedule an operating room for 60 minutes for most operations. And they put a 30-minute buffer before and a 30-minute buffer after. For them, if they could better understand how long a surgery is actually going to take, they could substantially increase the utilization of that room. All right, for them, that's the big opportunity. I've done work for an education, a school system. And for them, it's, how do we decide which students to accept into our program? And so for them, an AI algorithm that looks at who's most likely to be successful in this program and overlay the need for equity in the decision-making was the right thing. So as a result of that, I can't give you the answer you're looking for. I can give you a process for each of the people to think about so they'll come to the right answer for themselves.
Right. Thank you so much for that. So we have a few questions. So let's start with one. Someone who asked that you help with clarifying on what is the link between national AI policy and institutional policies for AI. So the narrative is, should one wait for national frameworks to be in place before developing institutional strategies and policies?
The answer to that is, from my perspective, is the institution itself should begin. It should look to what is likely to come as the national policy. But I fear if you wait for a national policy, by the time you get the policy, you'll be behind the opportunity to be using it. I think if you look at the key national policy models that have been established, the most restrictive and comprehensive is the EU AI Act. And you use that as kind of your guideline for your own organization while you're waiting for a national policy, I think you'll probably be in pretty good shape. My observation about national policies is big picture, they set some guidelines, but if you do your own and stay within, say, the EU AI Act, I'm guessing you will certainly be within what your national model is, and you'll already be ready to go and be moving.
Right. Thank you so much for that. A few more questions, and one is a response to the question that you posed to all of us. And Anita says, somewhere between 2019 and 2020, she thought that AI would be like a search engine, say Google or Firefox. Over time, she has seen it being used in different fields. And now that she sees it as an assistant, it can be ethically used to support different functions in whichever profession. So she's on a journey to learn how best she can utilize AI to be on top of her game. Right. And
stop there for a moment. What a fantastic description of how to both evolve your thinking about AI and using AI. In the way she said it, on the top of her game, that's using AI correctly. It's not replacing her, it's making her better.
Perfect. Then Joroge says, thanks for the presentation. He likes that you've used railway as and his interest would be a Kenyan case where we have a new railway city coming up. So he asks, what is the future impact of AI on the traditional tourism industry framework, and how can it be leveraged as a competitive advantage for smart tourism cities?
Well, I think there are a variety of different ways that it has value. When I shared with you where is AI's comparative advantages, you'll remember I talked about it can help you with simply things like forecasting. So forecasting. But more importantly, it's enabling you to target who you want to make aware of the tourism opportunities, who is the best tourist for you. Kind of sounds funny, but the fact is there are some tourists who are really value creating to you, and there are others who aren't. Being able to use AI to predict or to create here is the ideal tourist we want, and then help you target how do I reach those people, that would be an example. Another example would be using AI for questions and answers. So when a tourist has come to your community, maybe they don't speak the same language. How can you use an AI chatbot with multiple languages to help them better answer questions? Another is using AI to provide information about a particular tourist attraction. So I come to see this monument and I want to learn more about it. AI, through a QR code, tells me information and can be actually interactive with you so that you can question and answer as you're going through it. It can be also used as a way to forecast revenues. It can be a way to determine how much transportation infrastructure you have. So it can be all over the place. So back to my opening slide. I showed you my journey at the hospital, and I showed you all the different places where AI could play a role. I think the same would be true if you map out the processes associated with tourism, and then you can think about where would AI play it'll be all over the place.
Right. So a few more questions. Someone asked that okay, they mentioned that they've written a paper on AI and its effect on the collapse of thought. So Karanja Duo asks, will this thing, and actually called it a thing, will it stop us from thinking?
I worry about that quite a bit. I am not, my interest is how do you bring AI in to make value for our public sector? But having said that, I worry about us substituting our own thought and letting it make all the decisions. And while my belief is and my philosophy is it is a tool, it is one tool, as I described with this paper I need to summarize, I read it first, I thought about it, now I'm using AI to make sure I didn't miss anything. But it is a slippery slope to say, well, I'm short of time today, I'll just use the AI. For myself and people probably on this call, I'm less concerned. I'm very concerned about the young people today because I watch my graduate students using AI as a substitute. I'm sure it's happening at the secondary and school level. So I don't have an answer. I worry though.
Right. Then locally, the public sector does not get very innovative many a times because things are very structured and there's a lot of bureaucracy. So how would you advise about overcoming the inertia so that people and institutions leverage AI more? And tied to this question is another question. Maybe you can pick the two.
Yeah.
And as we look for other questions, if you are advising a CEO today, what would be your top recommendation for preparing the organizations for the AI era, those who are yet to adopt AI?
Okay. So let me start with the first one because that is essential. You have to, in addition to knowing the technology, finding the right use cases and the like, you have to have a change management plan. AI is scary. And so you're going to find a lot of people resistant because A, they may worry about, is this going to replace my job? B, they're going to worry about, do I have the expertise to be able to do this? C, is it eroding the power that I have? So change management is key. The way in which I think about change management goes back to that S-shaped adoption curve. Every innovation goes through it. The guy that came up with that now 70 years ago says the way in which you overcome the inertia is you start by identifying in the organization who are the opinion leaders and early adopters and innovators. And you recruit them to do a test, for them to be able to run a pilot, prove it works, and let them be the people who spread to everyone else. This is great. It works really well. I've gotten a lot of value. There is a wonderful book. It's called The Human Element. It is written by a guy named Nordgren, and it is a complete beginning to end of how you overcome inertia and make change management happen. So I'd recommend that. In terms of preparing your organization, I think you need to do a couple of things. One is you need to get people simply aware. You need to demystify it. Having a session like this with your organization, but obviously targeted to you and what you're specifically doing, is a great way to get people started. There's another way to kind of go beyond that is to invite some people in who have done it or are providing that AI services. So when I teach AI, I bring in probably 10 different organizations who are using AI. Either they've built an algorithm or they're selling an algorithm. And the reason I do that is it shows people how it really works. I'm sitting here talking to you and we're talking in platitudes. Seeing it actually make a decision, looking at it, seeing how it translates, that's what overcomes a lot of the fear that people have. And then the third piece is a willingness of an organization to say, and this is really at the CEO level, I want to experiment with this. And when I run an experiment, I know sometimes it's going to succeed and sometimes it's not going to succeed. And I am willing to accept the failures because I'm going to learn from those failures. If you have a CEO who has that mindset and can communicate that effectively to the organization, you're off and running.
Right. So I saw a couple of CEOs for both state corporations and some of the local startups we have, and I think that's well noted. Now, the final question before I invite Dr. Tony Omwansa to bring it to a close is that this is related to generative AI, and Steve asks, how can professionals maintain originality, critical thinking, and confidence in their own work rather than becoming overly dependent on AI generated? So he says that his biggest fear is being told his work is AI generic.
Well, the answer to that lies in each and every one of us. There is no magic wand that can prevent us from using this, and the temptation is high. There are lots of things that aren't good for us that we know, and we overcome the temptation. This is no different. So it's really up to each of us to say, I am going to do the first cut. I'm going to think about how I want to do it. And I'm going to use AI where the critical thinking skill is not the value. So if I'm trying to gather a bunch of data about an issue, I'm perfectly comfortable letting AI do that. If I'm looking for what are the most important academic papers that have been written on a topic, and I want it based on the journal it was in and the number of citations it has and the date, AI does that like this. I don't need to do that. In fact, if I want to generate a slide, a PowerPoint slide now, there's no intellectual value in that for me. AI does it like that. So finding the places where my thought process does not create value, I give that to AI. The places where my own intellectual thought is the real value, I always start with myself. Then I check with AI. And even when I'm short of time, I kind of force myself to do that. But it's us as individuals doing it. There is no magic pill that's going to solve this problem.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's the best answer, and it's very, very right, for lack of a better word. Okay, so I'll now invite Dr. Tony Omwansa to bring it to a close. It's been wonderful hosting you for the last 1 hour or so, and we would like to bring it to a close. Thanks to everyone, but over to you, Dr. Tony.
Thanks very much, George, for moderating, and thanks very much, Mark, for sharing your expertise and experiences. Now, I'm going to ask you a simple question, and then I will try to see how we close this session. So my question to you is, I am a CEO of an institution, sometimes public, sometimes private. And I want to provide the leadership and champion the agenda of leveraging AI for my institution to be as transformative as it can be, and also generate as much value as possible from AI. Is there some kind of framework that you think I should be exploring that probably tells me the steps or the sequence of things and such like, something that can guide me that I can then empower my team to leverage?
Well, I'm going to give a simple answer, but it's very self-serving. Go read my book. I realize that's a kind of a self-serving thing to say, but the way in which the book is structured is it's trying to provide you, it's a user book, it's not an academic book, but it's trying to provide you the basic building blocks. So we go through an introduction like we've just had, but more importantly, how do you build a governance structure? How do you bring the expertise into the organization? How do you pick the applications you're going to use? How do you run a pilot? How do you continually improve? And that's one source. There are lots of sources out there, but it's those basic building blocks are what we're really going after.
Thank you. That's exactly where I was leading this to, that, you know, because you've spent quite some time to document and think through these elements. So this should be beneficial to stakeholders. And as an innovation agency, we will make some effort to mobilize some of your material and avail it to our stakeholders. And in conclusion, just for the benefit of the listeners, is that we will avail this video on our portal, just like we do for other webinars, for others who couldn't make it, and you can forward it to others as well. Secondly, is we will explore further with Mark around how to leverage his experiences and practice to strengthen those who have an intention, you know, to advance AI in our institution. And as a practitioner, what I do know is that he is available using certain arrangements that we can build to be useful. So we will come back and circulate information to our ecosystem on how we see in terms of, you know, practical approaches of working with Mark. Thanks very much, Mark, and thanks very much, everyone, for joining, and have a good evening wherever you are.
Thank you so much as well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks and bye-bye. Good day, everyone.